I got you.
Standing up there. Yes. That does not sound strong.
That was the scene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Welcome to our hearing today. And thank you for being here in this lovely afternoon. My name is Henry Guerrero. I'm the Executive Director of DC 37 and co-chair of this commission along with Arva Rice. I want to thank Jerry Gallagher and Nicholas Mikal and the staff of the Museum of the City of New York for hosting us this evening. Tonight, we will continue our final round of public hearings taking place in all 5 boroughs. These hearings have furthered our efforts to solicit proposals from policy experts and the public on substantial, effective amendments to the city charter. The charter is our city's foundational document. And because the charter plays a vital role in establishing the structure and procedures of the city government, it shapes how decisions are made on a wide range of issues affecting everyday New Yorkers. This commission has been empaneled to conduct a thorough review of the charter. Okay. And I want to let me just finish in the the commission has been empaneled to conduct a thorough review of the charter and craft proposals to be put before the voters. This is our chance to create a better functioning city, one that is more transparent and its activities are more accountable to the people. It is an opportunity to make changes to ensure our city is less vulnerable to manipulation, corruption, or fraud. I know that all my colleagues take this responsibility very seriously. And while this commission was convened via local law passed by the city council, we are an independent body. And regardless of the merits, any proposals that can be achieved by local law would be likely not be out for consideration. And the commission will not consider any proposals that weaken local democracy of New Yorkers' rights. Following the second round of hearings, the commission staff produced an updated set of recommendations for the commission. These recommendations focus on 3 policy-specific areas: government accountability, budget transparency, and land use. Our final round of hearings also concentrates on these areas, which each covering one individual area. We previously held a hearing on government accountability in Staten Island, and we will hear some additional testimony on this topic tonight. Some final notes on the process. We are not the only commission reviewing the charter. The commission is distinct from the Charter Revision Commission convened by the mayor. Both commissions are working simultaneously but separately. In the final days of this year, New York State Legislature's legislative session, the Assembly and the Senate have passed legislation that would prevent mayoral proposals from bumping any other charter amendments from the ballots. Pending the governor's signature, a proposal could appear on the November ballot alongside with those of the mayor's commission. So I know that we have several other commissioners here. I want to turn it over to our co-chair, Arva Rice, to say a few words, and also we'll get the commissioners to introduce themselves. So, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. My name is Arva Rice. I'm the President and CEO of the New York Urban League. I'm happy to be here today and grateful to be with you all who are joining us and sharing your ideas. At each of our hearings, I was struck by the timeliness of our charge. We have convened this commission at a time when the American experiment is facing unprecedented challenges. Given this crisis and the overwhelming daily, sometimes hourly, news out of Washington, the importance of robust, accountable, and transparent local governance could not be clearer. Our work is therefore urgently needed to ensure that our city remains resilient, responsive, and reflective of all New Yorkers. Harry Isaiah Black is joining us today as counsel. I'd like to ask the members of the commission to briefly introduce themselves, starting to my left with Mr. Winston Griffith.
Winston Griffith, Executive Director. Director of Free Speech TV, and I'm here representing the public advocate, Jumaane Williams.
Hi, I'm Andrea Salwin Copel, and I'm appointed by City Council Speaker Adams.
Good evening, Robert Maraglia, appointed by Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson.
And we are also joined on the line. Commissioner, yes.
Dr. Ram Raju, appointed by the Staten Island Borough President.
You appreciate that. We will now turn to the testimony portion of tonight's agenda, which will focus on government accountability. As the commission staff indicated in its updated recommendations, increasing government accountability could strengthen New York's local democracy in several ways. This includes securing the independence of oversight agencies by establishing baseline investments and making other structural enhancements, subjugating additional commissioners and senior officials to advice and consent, establishing an additional means of removing a mayor, increasing transparency whenever the mayor uses their emergency powers, and authorizing the city council to submit local laws subject to mandatory referendums at special elections. Today, the charter contains an array of mechanisms and independent agencies designed to ensure city officials are responsive to the people they serve. Yet structural risks remain, preventing those features from working as designed. The commission is therefore interested in hearing more tonight about how we can update the charter to promote good governance. Before hearing testimony, I remind those in attendance that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum must be observed. As such, audience members shall remain silent at all times. If you intend to testify today, but have not yet registered to do so, we will accept registrations up to the first 30 minutes of tonight's hearing. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. Video recording or photography is not allowed from the witness table. At tonight's hearing, we will ask folks to limit their testimony to 3 minutes. I will let you know when your time is up. While tonight's hearing focuses on government accountability, we welcome any testimony on proposed revisions to the charter. I'm going to call witnesses up in panels. Commissioners are encouraged to ask questions based on testimony given, but I ask that you hold your questions until each member of the panel has testified. Finally, I ask that our witnesses and commissioners speak directly into their mics so that our Zoom attendees can clearly hear you. I would like to invite Katie Loeb as our first panelist. Please introduce yourself before you begin your testimonies.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Katie Loeb, Chief of Staff to New York City Council Member Carlina Rivera, and I'm providing testimony on her behalf. I want to start by thanking all of you and all of the members of the public who have provided testimony towards creating a government that is more transparent, accessible, and accountable to every resident. As Co-Chair Rice said, this is incredibly timely given the circumstances. And I understand how critical it is that voices of everyday New Yorkers are heard and accounted for in the decisions that shape our future and the landscape of our city. The communities that I represent have become increasingly unaffordable. And the top reason constituents come to my office is to ask for assistance in finding a safe and stable home. The Fair Housing Framework Law is a tool to promote and create equitable housing access, and it should be strengthened to require planning in parts of the city that have not met their targets for housing production. We can integrate this plan into other sections of the charter while outlining a better process for meaningful community planning. The Department for City Planning should provide technical support to promote community planning, including by giving community boards the opportunity to plan for their own growth. As we look to create infrastructure that includes the growing population and the needs of local families, it's important we include processes that are fair and transparent. The pre-certification process related to ULURP must be improved and can be made to be more efficient and transparent to reduce the risk of a project failing, regardless of whether that plan has the prior support of DCP or not. Keeping processes independent retains the public's trust and assures that community input, as well as the equality of our branches of government, is upheld. Over the past few years, decision-making based on public concerns has become a clear priority of the council. Proposals like strengthening the city council's advice and consent over key mayoral appointments, enhancing budget transparency through more detailed and programmatic units of appropriation, and promoting equitable land use policies. These all build on identified need for reforms to our governance structure that better reflects our shared values. At a time when our democratic norms are under attack across the country, the Commission's work is a reminder that local democracy still has the power to serve as a model of inclusion and integrity. I am encouraged that the Commission is working to lift community-driven proposals that move our city toward a more responsive and effective government, and look forward to working in partnership to ensure that all New Yorkers have a say in how our democracy works. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do any of our commissioners have any questions?
Just, I heard you reference the certification process for ULURP. Was there, I apologize if I missed it, but was there specific language or a specific proposal you have for us as far as the charter is concerned?
I think a lot of the pre-certification process to the ULURP might require state legislative changes, but it's important to remember that if there's a way the city charter can be used to make it more transparent and more responsive to community concerns, that would really enhance the ULURP process itself.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding your testimony and your recommendation on the advice and consent, right? So part of the struggle that we've heard from multiple testimony has to do with a process that wouldn't be slow the appointment of key commissioners. You know, the way that we see it in Congress sometimes, right? With hyper partisan results in the election. So what, in your opinion, would be an adequate number of agencies, for instance, that would be considered? You don't mention them on your testimony.
No, I don't mention a specific number of agencies. I do think that council can much more swiftly than Congress make these approvals. And I think there are many key agencies where the advice and consent of city council would improve the working relationship between the agency and the council itself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to call our next panelist, Anastasia Coleman.
So my name is Anastasia Coleman, and I am the Special Commissioner of Investigation for the New York City School District. And thank you for having me and thank you for this hearing. I would like to thank the co-chairs, Co-Chair Rice and Rito, for having us. And I'm here to discuss today, basically SEI's work, and its inclusion in the commission's report. Which emphasizes the minimum budgets for oversight agencies. SEI is a vital watchdog entrusted with autonomy in investigating allegations of criminality, corruption, and wrongdoing concerning the New York City Department of Education, the largest school district in the nation. SEI has broad authority and discretion to conduct investigations to root out corruption, prevent waste and fraud, ensure safety, and to identify and eliminate the misuse of taxpayer resources. SEI's oversight encompasses over 1,800 DOE facilities, nearly 1 million DOE students, and approximately 140,000 DOE employees, as well as DOE associated vendors and volunteers. SEI also serves as the Inspector General for the New York City Teachers Retirement System and the Board of Education Retirement System. We evaluate and investigate all whistleblower claims involving DOE employees and vendors under the New York City Administrative Code, and serves as the administrative arm of the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board regarding alleged violations of Chapter 68 of the New York City Charter by DOE employees and others. SEI ended calendar year 2024 with a full staff of 55 people. This staff includes administrators, confidential investigators, and support staff. In fiscal year 2024, SEI operated with a total annual budget of $6,361,054, of which $6,025,923 were allocated to personal service (PS) spending, and $335,131 were designated for OTPS other than personal service. I want to emphasize that SEI has maintained essentially the same operating budget for the past roughly 5 fiscal years. In fact, SEI's annual budget is a pass-through line in the DOE's overall annual budget of approximately $40 billion. In calendar year 2024, SEI received a record 11,874 complaints. These complaints allege a wide range of misconduct, waste, fraud, financial mismanagement, and criminality and criminal activity within the DOE and its retirement funds by employees, vendors, contracted workers, or volunteers, and alleged violations of administrative and criminal codes. We are on pace to set a new record number of complaints in 2025. To keep pace with the growing number of complaints SEI receives and to further strengthen SEI in its important mission to protect New York City's children, families, and taxpayers, SEI's annual budget must be funded more robustly. An essential step in doing so would be SEI's inclusion in the Commission's final staff report, along with the other essential oversight New York City agencies. Again, I thank the Commissioner and the Commission for the opportunity to testify this evening. I welcome any questions.
Thank you. First, before we go to questions, I wanted to acknowledge the attendance of 2 additional commissioners. I'm speaking with Commissioner Yu. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, Joanne Yu, appointed by Speaker Adams.
Also appointed by Speaker Adams.
Thank you. Do the other commissioners have any questions of our witness?
I do. Thank you for your testimony. In the case of other independent agencies, one of the suggestions has been that it's benchmarked, so to speak, as a percentage of the total agency. But given the size of DOE's budget, which is the largest of any agency, and given the small amount that your agency has been allocated, what sort of threshold would you think, since you suggested that it would be included on the independent agencies?
Yeah, I think that it should be a percentage of whatever agency you oversee, even if it's a 0.8% or a certain percentage, but it'd make it easier to have more planning for your actual office if you know what the budget's going to be and it's enough so that you can actually have a long-term planning.
So along those same questions you suggested, I think in your testimony, you mentioned the fact that for the last 5 years, essentially your budget has remained similar or stagnant, right? So what happens with the collective bargaining increases, things that are increases, cost of living? Do you receive those? Are you excluded from those?
Well, when we have, when everyone got those raises, like the city raises, that's how we increased the budget. We got the raises for the PS dollars for our people. But I think it's, like, for us, we're one line in the DOB's budget, and we're not similar to a lot of the other city agencies. So for us, I really think a percentage would be helpful to us. So you can't go to the DOB to say, hey, you want more money, you receive them, right? So that would be hard to do. And it would just make it cleaner, if we could have that percentage. And I think that's what some of the other oversight agencies are also requesting, and I think it's a pretty reasonable request.
Okay, are you still subject to the same pay cuts that the other agency, the program to eliminate the gap?
No, we don't.
You know,
Because it's a DOB then.
I see. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. You mentioned, you said there were more than 11,000 complaints. So what is your current, what does it look like right now in terms of your capacity to handle those complaints in a timely fashion? And when you're talking about increasing the budget, are you talking just about more people to handle those complaints?
I would like to have more people, and I'd also like to have more money for the support of them, whether it's with computers or whatever the specific things.
Sure.
We also have to drive, to all the different sites. So one of the problems that we've heard that's occurred recently is, as far as paying the gas and things like that. It used to be borne by the DAV, now we have to take care of that. So everybody, all the field investigators go throughout all 5 boroughs, because all the schools are located throughout the city.
Right.
So it would be a combination of people and support, underlying support.
And again, what's your current capacity as far as those 11,000 complaints?
So many of the complaints don't rise to a certain level, and we still go through them and make sure that it's not something that we should be doing, and we'll make sure that it gets referred to a lower level part of the DOE that's within the DOE, and we'll refer many cases to them. And then the other ones we'll take. We have over the last, I would say, year, our caseload has gone up enough per investigator.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get I don't know if you don't want to be specific. I just want to get a sense of what is it like with those 11,000? Are you feeling besieged? Do you feel like you're able to handle those complaints? What's the current environment?
And a lot of complaints coming towards the end of the school year. So right now we feel very, very busy. So we're trying to make sure we get witnesses and to see people before the end of the school year, and then people go on vacation and you don't get to see them. It's very hard to. But of course, we're going to have more people, see if handle more complaints, and then do things quicker than we wrote down.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Commissioner Cole, thank you so much for your testimony today. It's really sad to hear that we're setting those type of records as far as more and more complaints.
I hate to hear them though.
Yeah, it's true.
Again,
Understandable. I'm curious, just not being familiar specifically with those enforcement duties. Can you just briefly share with us what is the process for substantiated investigations or complaints? Are these referrals out to prosecutorial agencies or?
Yes, court cases are referred to prosecutors. Some are, with prosecutors early on in the beginning. They could be cases that are federal, cases that are state. It depends on what it is. As far as when a case comes in, we have actually an intake unit because we have so many complaints. They take in what comes in. We have a hotline. We have people, it comes in through, the online and people can call. And then after that, it's assigned, it either gets referred to where it should belong, like if it can go someplace else, it can. If it's something that we're gonna take, it depends on the nature of it. We get all the cases that deal with relationships between adults and children. And sometimes the police can't, arrest a person because there's, really just to tell them or whatever it is. If it's a relationship, it's not sexual, or police will say, okay, we're gonna arrest that person, but it's of a nature that's crossed all lines. We'll take those cases. And then we'll assign it to an investigator who will collect as much information as they can, witnesses, as much evidence as you can. If it's criminal, then we refer it to a prosecutor's office. If it's not criminal, we'll refer to the DOE as to what, if any, discipline they can decide what they want to do with their employee, we'll make a recommendation. But it's really the DOE's employee whether they want to. It can take a while or it can be short. It depends on the evidence and how many witnesses you might have or how many documents you have to get to them. So
Thank you for what you're doing.
it varies.
Thank you for your service to the city.
I have a question. Yes. Can you talk about your capacity for language access?
Our website does have a way so that everyone you can switch to the different languages. We also use the language line, and we have some people in the intake unit who speak other languages.
Thank you.
Your office have performed investigations regarding procurement violations that refer to a specific employee in a vendor. Since you are not part of the PPD rules, the DOE that is, what is the process for, is there a process in existence where you are able to debar a vendor for some financial impropriety based on your report?
So we can make a recommendation and the DOE can make a decision whether they want to contract with that vendor. We'll put forth why, and we can make a recommendation saying, if you, based on these, I don't think you should be working with this person, but, whatever the vendor is, but it's the DOE's decision whether they say we're not going to use this vendor or not. It's not like, how you can say, or discard. That's not what we do. We'll do the case and we'll refer it to them and they can make their business decision whether they want to use that vendor or not.
So does your recommendation goes to the chancellor or does it go to the panel?
We'll send it to the chancellor, we'll copy the general counsel. And we'll actually, for something like that, we also copy contracts and purchasing state, specifically. And we probably interviewed some people during the course of the investigation in contracts and purchasing, probably or not. But we have done, some cases that have gone to the Southern District, antitrust unit, so that.
Unfortunately, you see the same vendors like come up later on. I know a few cases where your office did a very thorough interview process and found reasons by these vendors, and they're still doing work with the city because they haven't been reviewed.
People do iterations of a new company that's.
Right. Thank you for your work.
Yes, please. You didn't address this, but in some of our other work with other similar positions, we're looking at the process of and removal for commissioners such as yourself. So I wondered if you had any comments about that process as it currently is and any recommendations for change to just ensure independence.
So, for my office, the special commission is appointed by the DOI commissioner, and then approved by the mayor. So that I think I don't know the real reasoning behind that, but the DOI commissioner would have a say to what qualities they like in the special commissioner. And I think there's also a back and forth sometimes. We have cases that cross over, right? So someone might be doing something at the city agency and then we're also doing it at the DOE. So I mean, it is what it is, how it's set up right now. And whatever the commission thinks is a good idea for appointment, I can really independent. That's really for the commission to decide because when you have less sway. But that's really up to the commission, the recommendation. But I do believe in independence. I think that's a good idea. And I also think for removal, I think there should be a way to make statements as to why. Because then the person can feel as if they've been heard. And I think that's important too.
I had a really quick follow-up. You heard the question about the 11,000 cases that you currently are addressing. Have you gotten to a point where there's cases that you're not able to take on because of your volume? And then also, and then the second part was just around your budget. And so you said that you've received some increases because of the latest union contract that was. And I just wanted to know, otherwise, is your budget approved by OMB? And if it has been, do you actually see the monies or are there other complications in order to implement those budget changes?
So we do specific target requests for things when we say, okay, we need 3 more cars, we need certain things, and we just go straight to OMB. That's how we go through the process. I think it's a little different from other city agencies. So we make those types of requests and then we justification, we round and round, and eventually here come out. So we go through that process. It takes a bit of time. And then as far as the complaints are concerned, I'd rather take a case than not take a case. As far as my investigators probably don't want to hear this. I'd rather than have more cases than for us to turn down a case that I think is important and significant.
Right, but you're not at the point of the volume that there's complaints that you literally can't take, like you have to have this category that you've just like totally, completely let go. And the reason why I'm asking that is because the Civilian Complaint Review Board had gotten to that point in place. And so I wanted to know if you were in a similar situation.
I wouldn't do that. If a case rises to the right level, we'll take it. When we refer things to OSI, which is the internal one, we also tell them if there's anything that rises to a level of criminality, if there's a pattern, if there's anything that you see that's important, you need to send it back to us. So it could be started by OSI, and it, we don't think it rises to a certain level, and then it could rise to a certain level. But I'd rather take the case than not take the case. That means.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just one follow-up. On removal, is there, so there's can you remove without cause? And how's that work right now? Is it the mayor's office that makes the removal or is it the DOI commissioner?
So I don't okay, but I think it would be, I'm not really sure. I think it would be the DOI commissioner. I don't know. Obviously, I serve a commissioner too, so the mayor said you should go. There we go. I love to but that's just, don't know what the process is. In the past, there was a provision that I think got removed from there's executive orders. And in the past, there was one where the SEI Commission would be able to make a public statement, but I believe that was removed by the next iteration of the executive order. So I guess the public statement would be removed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We also have a commissioner who has joined us on Zoom. No. One more call. We have a commissioner who has joined us on Zoom who has not introduced themselves as yet. Okay, we will return.
That's all he was talking.
That's us.
All right, we will come back to that. In the meantime, we're going to have our first panel to join us. If you could, I'm going to ask Jenurine Wong. Oh, wait, actually, they're joining us by Zoom. And then Andrea Bondalas, who's joining us in person. And please introduce yourselves with the correct pronunciation for the record, please.
Thank you. So my name is Jen Vin Wong. I'm a supervising attorney with the COP Accountability Project at the Legal Aid Society. The Legal Aid Society provides legal services to New York City residents who are unable to afford private counsel. And annually, through our criminal, civil, and juvenile offices in all 5 boroughs, our staff handles more than 300,000 cases for low-income families and individuals, and we are the largest public defense organization in the country. The COP Accountability Project at the Legal Aid Society works to challenge harmful policing practices, strengthen police accountability, and promote greater transparency through litigation and advocacy. In addition to my testimony here today, I'm also submitting written testimony that provides more in-depth discussion about our recommendations. The CCRB and the OIG NYPD play crucial roles in addressing individual instances of police misconduct, as well as broader systemic issues involving the NYPD. And to be most effective, these agencies must have adequate resources and remain independent from any political influence that may impact their work. We support this commission's proposals to increase funding for the CCRB and to enhance the overall independence of DOI. We also support the proposal to require advice and consent of the City Council for the appointment of department heads, including the police commissioner. And while these proposals, if adopted, would be positive steps forward, we encourage this commission to be even bolder in its recommendations to increase police accountability. We reject the proposal to expand the number of board members on the CCRB as a means of addressing its inability to review completed investigations. Instead, we propose that this commission consider eliminating board panel review altogether and make the findings of civilian investigators final. In addition, we urge this commission to restore public trust in NYPD disciplinary hearings by amending the city charter to treat NYPD officers like all other New York City civil servants by returning the disciplinary trials back to the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, otherwise known as OATH. First, with respect to the recommendation to peg the CCRB total budget to at a minimum of 1% of NYPD's budget, we support this proposal because the budget floor is necessary given the recent increases in the number of complaints to the CCRB, multiple expansions to its jurisdiction, the complexity of the types of allegations investigated, etc. We would also like to note that the CCRB's annual budget as a percentage of the NYPD's budget is also much smaller than similarly situated civilian oversight agencies throughout the country. However, we do want to emphasize that the 1% of the budget of NYPD's budget should be the minimum, and that additional funds should be allocated as necessary to ensure that the CCRB can effectively carry out its mandate. Second, with respect to OIG, NYPD, and DOI, in recent years, funding cuts to DOI have greatly reduced the number of issue-based reports that the OIG has been able to publish. Their headcount has decreased from a peak of 38 in 2017 to 9 as of January 2025. Therefore, we support the recommendation to establish a minimum budget for DOI. And in addition, we also support the proposal to strengthen the overall independence of DOI from potential interference by requiring the removal of the commissioner only for cause. Protecting DOI from even the appearance of any interference is paramount to ensure the integrity of city government. Third, we do support the recommendation to require advice and consent of the City Council for appointment of the police commissioner. The police commissioner serves a very important public role, and requiring advice and consent of the City Council would provide an opportunity for public input, as well as an additional layer of oversight in filling this position. As to our additional proposals, we urge the Commission to adopt 2 additional proposals to strengthen accountability and police discipline. One, with respect to eliminating board review of completed investigations and making investigator findings final. Civilian investigators conduct thorough and impartial investigations under the supervision of experienced civilian investigative attorneys. And under the current rules, investigators recommend dispositions on each misconduct allegation to the board. A panel of 3 board members review and vote on a disposition for each allegation within the complaint. Agency staff have significant experience in NYPD policies and procedures, and they've also received rigorous training in investigating police misconduct. Therefore, they are the best position to determine whether an officer did or did not engage in misconduct. This change would modernize the CCRB and bring its practices in line with other investigative civilian oversight agencies across the country. Analyses of board votes show that the panel composition actually plays a significant role in determining the final disposition of allegations, with certain appointees flipping investigator dispositions from substantiated to unsubstantiated. Substituting the judgment of professional investigators with those of political appointees does a disservice to those who have experienced police misconduct by foreclosing the possibility that an officer may be appropriately disciplined. Furthermore, this board review adds unnecessary delay to a process that is already severely constrained by an 18-month statute of limitations. In recent years, NYPD dismissed hundreds of substantiated CCRB cases because they claimed that they were transmitted to the NYPD too close to the statute of limitations. More recently, this issue has actually been exacerbated by rising numbers of complaints filed with the CCRB and persistent vacancies in the board. The city charter has no requirement that the board or any panel review individual cases. With respect to our recommendation to move NYPD disciplinary hearings to oath, from the late 1980s until 2003, NYPD stemming from CCRB cases were conducted by oath. Returning NYPD disciplinary hearings to oath would place NYPD officers before a neutral arbiter, an administrative law judge, rather than one associated with the NYPD that may give at least the appearance of bias. As the largest public defender organization serving New Yorkers, we are witnesses to the impact that police misconduct can have on an individual's liberty and ability to live with dignity. We refer the commission to review our written testimony for more in-depth feedback on the proposals and our recommendations. We support the commission's proposals as it is imperative that we ensure robust civilian oversight of the NYPD. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to go to our next witness before we ask questions.
My name is Andrea Fondulis, and I am a master's in public and policy. I research, give public talks, and teach about New York City elections. And I just want to thank the commissioners for the work you are doing to uphold the fabric of our city and just our society. And so it's no secret that we struggle with voter turnout in our local elections. The 2021 mayoral Democratic primary, the 26% voter turnout, broke records. That's something that I always take a big issue with, and it is something that bewilders me, is the disconnect that we see in our elections. That in a city with a population larger than most states in the country, but one could argue, and I do often, that local elections is where New Yorkers have the most power. So we see consistently in federal presidential elections, they always have much higher turnout, nearly double every time. And this is despite the fact that the Electoral College dilutes our votes, unfortunately, in New York City. And when I was teaching a class recently, we were discussing this phenomenon, and we came down to the belief that this comes to an issue of awareness. Awareness becomes second nature during presidential elections. It becomes a part of our cultural and social fabric, for better or for worse. And no matter where you go or what you do, you cannot avoid hearing or seeing anything about its impending arrival. And my point is that this is what it should become in New York City election. And it is always astonishing to me that given the level of power and importance of local elections in the greatest city on earth, that reminders of the upcoming election aren't draped off billboards off the Empire State Building. They're not hung from flags of the Statue of Liberty, and it's not printed off the Staten Island Ferry. And so I know this might be a pipe dream, but as we're talking about these laws that would go into the city charter to change, I think there should be a law requiring local elected officials to heavily broadcast and remind constituents of local elections. And I don't think there would be a one size fits all, since every district across our city is incredibly different, but I'm not just referring to sending pamphlets or newsletters. Again, every district should be draped in these reminders, encouraging people to vote. And that would look like electeds working with local businesses and how they can display election information. It should be on flag poles and across the entire district, hung off banners of scaffolding and flyers and posters in every subway stop. And it should become, like federal elections, impossible to ignore. And I know we have laws right now where the Board of Elections is to educate voters in New York City, and NYC Votes and Campaign Finance Board does incredible work. We are seeing incredible voter turnout in this election right now, and some of that is because of the creativity of the campaigns and how they are engaging voters. But it shouldn't just be these institutions engaging and educating 5 million voters in the city. And so there's plenty I'd like to reform about elections in the city, but I really think we need to stop making elections as political as they are, and about exercising our right to vote in the city that the world looks to. And I don't think it can be more important. So thank you for letting me testify, and I hope everyone here and everyone watching has already voted or plans to vote in the election.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to ask the commissioners to go first in asking their questions. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Going to your proposal about, I was hoping you could speak more about your proposal for the CCRB to just accept the findings of the investigator. Could you just talk us through what happens right now and then what would actually be different then? So I'm wondering if we take away that power from the board to review the cases, and what would be the function then of the CCRB if they're not going to be reviewing the cases?
Sure. Just because we eliminate board review of the investigator recommendations does not mean that the board is then completely obsolete. The board actually does function in other manners as well in terms of reviewing cases to investigate to see if they, if it is exempt from the statute of limitations, for example, if allegations fall under a crime exception. But as of right now, what happens with the vast majority of cases is that investigator will receive a complaint, conduct a thorough investigation, make findings, write up a report, and submit that report to the board. And the board will review and make and vote on each allegation in the complaint. But board review was originally created when the CCRB's function was to review internal investigations of police misconduct and not independent investigations conducted by civilians. One thing about board review is that it's rather redundant, and the analyses that have come out about board review showing how the panel composition plays a significant role in determining the final disposition and the flip rate that I had referred to. The flip rate is almost always with respect to substantiated to unsubstantiated. And so when that happens, those complainants who have experienced police misconduct are foreclosed of the possibility of the subject officer being appropriately disciplined. And that's where this proposal is really coming from.
So then, I'm sorry, a spell. So, but then you're saying on that the reason that there was the board review was for sort of internal investigation, so there would still be a role for the CCRB otherwise?
Yes. I mean, the board panels themselves are, I believe, they're a tremendous use of scarce board resources, and they don't add significant value. And most importantly, it unnecessarily prolongs the complaint adjudication process. What happens and what has happened in recent years is that the board review added this delay that's to a process that is already severely constrained by this 18-month statute of limitations. So one of the most recent analyses in recent years, I can't remember exactly which year it was now, I believe it was 2-3 years ago, but the NYPD dismissed hundreds of substantiated CCRB complaints because they were typically transmitted to the NYPD too close to the statute of limitations. However, the NYPD's interpretation of what was too close to the statute of limitations it is not governed by anything that's written in the charter. It is just determined by the NYPD. And the adjudication process, because of board review, is lengthened when the final recommendation by the investigator of an allegation that is substantiated should be the one that actually goes to the NYPD at that point.
Sorry. What are the grounds for the board to flip an investigation? Like, what do they have to provide a rationale, or what do the studies show is the rationale for taking the finding of the investigators and saying we think this is not substantiated?
They do have to write up at some point like some sort of finding or justification for why it has been flipped. I think that the CCRB itself would be able to shed more light on how that actually works. But recent reports had shown again that allegations were flipped from substantiated to unsubstantiated. They are very rarely flipped in the other direction from unsubstantiated to substantiated. And so in essence, what it does is that it undermines this accountability process, and it gives at least an appearance that that officers are not going to be held accountable for their misconduct.
Thanks.
I believe we had a question on the side.
I have a question. Oh,
And then we'll go to Commissioner Yu.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that panel composition, that there's a pattern where the composition of the the board panel is shown to affect the outcome. For people who are maybe really familiar with with the board and what you might be implying, you're going to need to spell it out for me. Can you say more about the panel composition and what about the panel position? What's the pattern?
So each panel composition does have a requirement that there are a certain number of police commissioner appointees, as well as mayoral appointees and city council appointees. And what it means, and this is something that was actually covered in a recent report in connection to the stop and frisk federal monitorship by the Honorable Judge Yates, which is a report on police misconduct and discipline. It noted that when the board panel votes were actually analyzed, there was a higher flip rate when the board, I'm sorry, let me just back up actually, because there was actually a recent article by investigative journalists that noted that there was a higher than usual flip rate with board panels that included a mayoral political appointee, for example. And so it's not just something that is confined to panels that are already skewed with the requirement to have certain police commissioner appointees on the board, but it's something that could happen because of a mayoral appointee or something else. But there's a dual issue here that's not just about the composition of the board, but it is also about the additional requirement to have board review, because when there are vacancies like there have been recently, it delays the adjudication process. And then it means that the investigative process of police misconduct complaints are then forced to run up against this statute of limitations. And the city charter has no requirement that there is a board or any panel review of individual cases in every instance. And so we would propose that the language that should be added to the charter are that findings and recommendations of civilian investigators are final when a complaint is fully investigated and shall not require board or panel review or approval.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner, you had a comment as well?
No, I had the same line of questioning about the composition. Good, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have kept this. So just one more question. When the board panel review delays, the ultimate resolution of the complaint, do you have any data about how much delay?
I don't have the data right now. I do have a citation of the written testimony that we will be submitting. And this is actually something that was publicly reported by an investigative journalist. I believe this was reported, and also is actually something that was mentioned in Judge Yates' discipline report for the federal monitorship that was published back in September of 2024. I would have to get to you the information with respect to the investigative journalists and the data that
Yeah, that's fair. To follow up with written testimony would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did you have
one more follow-up?
One more follow-up, sorry. And this is a sort of a more philosophical question, but is there a concern that in removing the board's review of individual cases that we're creating a due process issue where, you have the investigators making the findings, but then it's just going straight to, the NYPD for sanction, not necessarily there another step to make sure that the findings and the investigation were handled correctly?
I do understand that concern. I would note that the process, at least my understanding of it, and anyone who has perhaps a better understanding of the CCRB process could also clarify this for you. But my understanding is that final recommendations, the findings from completed investigation from the CCRB are sent to NYPD Department Advocate's office. The police commissioner at all times will have final say on whether discipline is imposed or not. And in addition to that, an officer can either accept the final recommendations or they can challenge it. And if they challenge it, it goes to the NYPD. It goes to trial. It goes to an administrative trial where that officer's due process will be protected because they'll have an opportunity to be heard in what we're proposing before oath, before an administrative law judge.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions of this witness? I'm trying to resist here, but so the CCRBs, each case is looked at by a three-person panel, and that panel does have to include a police representative and also somebody from the city council or the mayor's office. The article that you referred to a particular appointee from the mayor's office who led to a number of different flips that were happening after I served at the CCRB. So with that said, are there any questions of our other witness?
I have a question.
Yes.
Not a question, just a quick thank you. Thank you both for your testimony today. Ms. Wong in particular, thank you very much for the work that you do in your organization. You're quite literally a lifeline for us in the Bronx. And I think I can't think enough about the attorneys that you have and the advocates. I was just recently introduced to one of your Obama Foundation folks, who's an extraordinary appellate arguer. And I just think the world to be in. We're very grateful for you. Thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. I'm just going to follow up with what you said, Ms. Wong. So if there was a challenge to a finding by CCRB and it goes to oath, do you track like what the outcomes are? Like, when is it always found in the officer's favor? Like, you know.
We don't proactively track it, although the data is publicly available, I believe. I believe that the NYPD now also posts some subset of their trial room decisions, for example. And so the information is available. I myself am not a data analyst, although we have a data team that looks at that. Right now, if an officer, does not agree with the finding or does not want to plead guilty or negotiate some sort of other disciplinary outcome, the case would then go to the NYPD trial room. And at the end, in the NYPD trial room, it is either going to be prosecuted by the Department Advocate's Office within the NYPD or by the CCRB's own administrative prosecution unit. And so an officer does have an opportunity to be heard at that point and to go through this administrative trial. So there is a due process stopgap, if you will. In terms of how often they are found guilty after a department trial, I don't have that data, although I do think that that's something that we would have to compile through the NYPD trial room, and we'd have to go through because it's just not the way that they report the data at the right now.
Thank you. Interesting.
All the information can be found on the CCRB's website. They can track that. Are there any other questions of either one of our witnesses? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
We will call our fourth panel. Luis Nelson Williams, Reggie Chapman, and Jennifer Parrish. And once again, please correct my misspelling or mispronunciation in your introduction.
Yeah, my name is Lovis. No, it's fine. It's okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So good evening, everyone. Lovis Nelson Williams. I'm the policy director for the Independent Writers Commission, often known as the Littman Commission. Our chair, former Chief Judge of the State of New York, Jonathan Littman. Thank you for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to testify. We strongly encourage this commission to strengthen the Board of Corrections' role and powers to help ensure the Department of Correction and Correctional Health Services improve safety and service delivery, areas that are woefully lacking. We recommend 3 areas we change: the DOC budget, membership, and powers duty. We also urge that the City Council be provided the power to confirm the DOC Commissioner. We can start with the DOC budget. So first, set the DOC budget at 1% of the combined DOC and Correctional Health Services budget. As the DOC oversees both in their entirety, that would raise the board's budget from $4 million to roughly $12.5 million. Secondly, we need to address the DOC membership. First, change the allocation of the 9 DOC member appointments to ensure more independence and separation from City Hall. The configuration could be 3 people appointed by the City Council, 3 by the mayor, 1 by the public advocate, and 1 by the comptroller, or 1 by the borough president on a rotating basis. 2, ensure board members include a diverse array of experience, including formerly incarcerated people and their families, healthcare professionals, including mental health and former DOC staff. 3, the mayor and city council should appoint the BOC chair together. Third, the BOC powers and duties. First, allow BOC to sue to enforce its regulations and minimum standards when necessary. 2, require regular updates to the BOC's minimum standards for the DOC and CHS operations. The minimum requirements are outdated. As a result, the DOC has been forced into an oversight body managed by variants, which strips the minimum standards of power and authority. We recommend a mandatory review and update in 2026, followed by review and updates every 10 years. And lastly, DOC reform. One, empower the city council to confirm the DOC commission. And so together we can capitalize on this opportunity and bring about the change we need. Thank you.
Thank you. We will hear from our other two witnesses and then take all of the questions at the same time from the commission. So if we can hear from Mr. Chapman, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, commission members, for allowing me to offer testimony regarding the need to enhance the Board of Corrections independence and functionality. My name is Reggie Chapman. I'm the Director of Policy at the Fortune Society's David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy. I'm also a formerly incarcerated person who spent 25 years in the criminal legal system. And since my release, I've been able to obtain my MPH in epidemiology and health policy and practice. This combination of my lived experience and academic training, I believe, gives me a distinct lens through which to assess the board's critical need to receive resources and independence to provide a robust oversight over DOC. I've submitted written testimony in support of my spoken testimony, and so I just want to highlight a few issues in respect to BOC's need for resources, independence, and transparency. The board needs more resources to effectively fulfill its mandate. The board currently has 32 employees. Rikers Island, however, has 7,000 staff across 10 facilities. This differential inhibits the Board of Corrections' ability to effectively oversee one of the largest employee bases and problematic jail systems in the country. Thus, Fortune urges the commission to support a referenda to amend the charter to increase BOC's budget to at least 1% of DOC's $1.2 billion budget. This would increase the board's budget from $4 million to $12 million, which would enable it to hire the staff that it needs to conduct its business. And the board needs to fulfill its oversight responsibilities and independence. To this end, the charter should allow all board members to conduct quarterly tours with special attention to mental health and restrictive housing units, and require at least 2 board members to tour any facility following an incarcerated person's death. It should also be able to hold minimal biannual meetings with district attorneys, defense attorneys, and judges to inform them about current conditions in DOC's compliance with minimum standards. And in order to provide true oversight, it should be independent. As currently constructed, the city hall and the judiciary appoints the majority of the board members. This structure creates fertile ground for political interference and undermines the board's ability to function as an impartial oversight body. To ensure meaningful, informed, impartial oversight, the charter should allow multiple stakeholders to appoint the 9 members. In addition, it should include at least 1 incarcerated person and immediate family member to the board. It should also include at least 2 licensed health professionals, one of whom has mental health training. And I'll also say that I'll be remiss for saying that instituting these measures is a public health imperative. Allowing them to do so allows them to create and to engage in injury prevention and prevent this crisis at the population level. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Parrish?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Parrish, and I'm the Director of Criminal Justice Advocacy at the Urban Justice Center Mental Health Project. I initially testified at the Commission's hearing in the Bronx last month, and I submitted written testimony in support of comprehensive reforms to charter provisions related to the Board of Correction. The city jails need your attention. Since the last time this commission convened, 2 more lives have been lost. Benjamin Kelly and James Maldonado died in DOC custody on Friday. I cannot stress enough the urgency of this situation. My written testimony describes the full slate of reforms needed, but tonight I want to address the updated recommendations which were issued on June 6th. I appreciate that the staff endorsed a few of the reforms we proposed. However, those changes alone are insufficient to ensure meaningful outside oversight of the jails. At a minimum, you should recommend changes to the way the board members are appointed and how the board is funded. For the board's oversight to be meaningful, it needs to be independent of the mayor. Currently, the mayor has an outside role in the functioning of the board as he appoints 6 of the board members, selects the chair, and determines the agency's budget. Rather than having 3 of the board members appointed by the mayor on the nomination jointly by the presiding judges of the appellate division courts, the charter should give that authority to other citywide elected officials who are more directly connected with the jail system and directly concerned with the jail system. The public advocate and controller are citywide elected offices, and their responsibilities make them well positioned to nominate board members. Through successive administrations, the public advocate and the controller have demonstrated an interest in the functioning of the jails and have brought their role to bear in this arena. For example, when Letitia James was the public advocate, she petitioned the Board of Correction to adopt standards eliminating sexual assault and sexual harassment. The current public advocate, Jamani Williams, was the lead sponsor of legislation to end solitary confinement in the city jails. Similarly, current and previous controllers have scrutinized the Department of Correction and identified systemic failures. When Scott Stringer was a controller, he issued annual reports about the department's spending and their performance, and brought attention to the exorbitant amount of money the city spends to incarcerate individuals on Rikers. Controller Brad Lander created a dashboard that tracks key measures related to DOC operations. These 2 officials are elected by the entire city, and their constituents include New Yorkers incarcerated at Rikers Island. They should be given the appointment power, which is currently reserved for the mayor upon nomination of the presiding judges. If this commission believes that the presiding judges should be involved in appointing board members, then please at least propose changing the charter so that in addition to appointing its own members, that the council is the one that appoints the members nominated by the board, by the courts. The other staff recommendation I want to address is regarding the board's budget. The updated report recommends that the board be, quote, funded at a level adequate to fulfill its charter responsibilities. Without more specificity, such a change is unlikely to have a meaningful impact on the board's budget. There's no question that the board's current staffing level is inadequate. Their FY25 budget, $3.8 million, supported only 33 positions. That's about 0.3% of the Department of Corrections budget. The board doesn't have adequate jail monitoring, research, or legal staff to provide the comprehensive oversight required. A minimum budget that's tied to the DOC budget will provide flexibility needed so that when they need to decrease staffing as Rikers Island is closed and the jail population decreases, and also in times of economic distress, when there have to be cuts to the city budget, tying the board's budget to the department will ensure that the board is not disproportionately impacted by such reductions. The city jails are institutions closed to public scrutiny, literally isolated on an island currently. Independent outside oversight of the system is essential. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony, and I'm going to go to the commissioners to see what questions you have.
First, thanks to all the panelists for your testimony. My question was to Mr. Chapman. Just wondered, can you talk a little bit about what you said about taking away the power of appointment from the mayor to stakeholders? I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Could you repeat the question again? I'm getting some background.
Taking away the power of appointment from the mayor and allowing local stakeholders to appoint. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
I apologize. One more time, sir. It's hard for me to hear you, sir.
That's okay. Testimony you said, it sounded like you were saying you want to take away the power of the DOC members from the mayor. And I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I'm just, if I heard your question correctly, because it's not coming through clearly. But when we talk about, so just diversifying the board of corrections, right? You're referring to that question?
That's right, yes.
Yes. So I think it's two-pronged. I think at baseline, it's in the Board of Correction is an executive agency. So I think at baseline there's a conflict there. But also in addition to that, allowing people from these communities that have been affected, formerly incarcerated people and their families to participate in this process creates for a more dynamic response and maybe even solutions to the problem at hand. And so I just think that in this case, diversity is very, very important so that everyone is represented in this process and everyone is served.
Thank you.
My question is for Ms. Nelson-Williams. Can you talk about some additional powers, your recommendation for additional powers to force compliance in the jails?
I mean, the number one thing that we named here was around the power to enforce this regulation. So right now,
board cannot sue in order to enforce. And so
Can
it
you-
makes
I'm sorry, can you speak into the
I'm
microphone?
sorry,
Mhm.
I should have been in the mic. So the number one thing that we recommended here is about the power to sue. And so the ability to enforce its decisions with that suing power is missing. But right now, the recommendations are made, but there is no suing power. And so when we were like in the midst of doing this, at this moment, we're looking at like other bodies that have similar powers right now. And so we urge you to look to like Federal Labor Relations Authority, for example, that has built in within its authority to sue and to be able to bring the recommendations to the forefront in terms of what actually needs to happen in jail and prisons.
Thank you.
Other questions from our commissioners? Other questions? Oh, okay. All righty. Okay. If there are no other questions, and thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it. We're going to bring our final panel, our last panelist, actually. If we can have Johnny Rivera, who is on Zoom. Mr. Rivera, can you hear us? Yes, there you are.
Mute, sir.
Yes, you're on mute. Can you hear us? You can hear us. Okay, all right.
Headphones.
We'll give you a moment. Okay, I'm going to go, can I go ahead and make this announcement about our next hearings and we can come back to him? Sorry about that. I want to remind everybody that our next hearings are Thursday, June 26th at the Sunset Park Library in Brooklyn. That one's going to be focused on land use. And we're going to have one on July 1st at the Queens Public Library in Jamaica. And as this is our final hearing, it will focus on any area that are in that any area that folks have of interest. All hearings are from 5 to 7, and folks are invited to testify either in person or via Zoom. And registration and further details on all hearings are on our website at www.thecommission.nyc. Mr. Rivera, are you back? Any luck? No? If not, we can invite you to join us once again on Zoom on Thursday, June 26th at Sunset Park. We'll be in person at the library in Brooklyn. But if you, yes, then feel free to join us on June 26th. You can join us by Zoom. We will still be more than welcome to hear your testimony and your contribution. And if you do have a written testimony, want to submit it, we can do that as well. And that is to anyone who is listening online or here in person. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone who testified today and watch online or in person. And also we want to thank the commission staff for the work that they do. They were here early preparing, they do a tremendous job. So want to thank them in helping us organize this hearing. And are there any other matters? Any other questions, any matters the commissions want to bring up?
Just a reminder to vote, for those of you who have not voted, tomorrow It's election day.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that you can still submit written testimony as the co-chair mentioned. You have 72 hours from the time of this hearing, and you can submit that to online. Let's see if I can read it again. info@thecommission.nyc, info@thecommission.nyc. So if anyone could not testify, you could still do so. Since there are no other questions of the commissions, I would at this point entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been improperly seconded. Any questions? Let's take a vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any nays? Any abstention? The ayes have it. And so ordered. Thank you. This commission is adjourned.
Thank you.